everyone. My name is Cody Roecker, and I am currently a bookseller in Oregon, but formerly of the Novel Neighbor. And I'm very stoked to be doing our kickoff event for the St. Louis Teen Book Festival. Before we began, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our sponsors. Our sponsors for this festival are the St. Louis County Library, HEC Media, and the Novel Neighbor Bookstore. This festival, we are hosting over 38 of the hottest young adult writers of right now. It's 11 days of programming dedicated to connecting teen readers with a diverse group of authors and just allowing everybody to really get a connection with writing and YA authors and do some great stuff. I just also wanted to mention that you guys can order all of the books from any of our panels or anything that's going on through the Novel Neighbor at thenovelneighbor.com. And so without further ado, I delayed a little bit long enough. I'm very happy to be introducing our keynote interviewee, Marissa, who is the New York Times bestselling author of the Renegades Trilogy, the Lunar Chronicles, the Wire neurographic novels, the Lunar Chronicles coloring book, and so many more things. She is also the author of Heartless, which was also a New York Times bestselling book. And she creates and hosts a podcast called The Happy Writer. She currently lives in Tacoma, Washington, with her husband and her 2 daughters. So please give me a hand in welcoming Marissa Meyer.
Yay! Hello! Hi, Cody. I'm so happy to be here.
I thought we could start today off by just talking about your most recent release, Instant Karma. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on that TV option you just got.
Thank you. I know. I'm so excited. This is the first thing I've done where it's been known and out in the world. I can talk about it. It's so great.
It's awesome. I'm so excited for you. I wanted to talk specifically about one of my favorite things about the book was the focus on environmentalism and the research into aquatic life preservation. Do you think you could talk a bit about the research that went into that and how you became so passionate about it?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I've always been a little bit of an environmentalist. I remember when I was maybe in 3rd or 4th grade, and we went to the library, and I ended up checking out this humongous 1,000-page book that was all about environmentalism and what we can do to save the planet. And this is 25, 30 years ago now. And I got home and my dad saw it and was like, yep, that's Marissa. That's the sort of thing she's interested in reading. So it's kind of something that I've cared a lot about for kind of my whole life. And then as I was starting to work on this book, I had this idea about this girl that develops this, sort of superpower to be able to cast instant karma on people. And I was playing around with this idea. And one day I was reading a magazine and came across an article about a sea turtle rehabilitation center in Florida. And it was a really fascinating article. And I just loved reading about the volunteers and how they are just so passionate about helping sea turtles. And I was like, I never would have thought to devote my life to helping sea turtles. And they just cared so deeply. And of course, the article talked a lot about what the plight of the sea turtle is and how pollution and littering and plastics and global warming and all of these things are impacting them in their habitat. So I just got really interested in that, and I thought, well, I would love to set a book in a sea animal rescue center. And lo and behold, the 2 things just kind of meshed together in my imagination, and I ran with it. And one of the highlights of writing the book was that I got to go down to San Diego. I was in town for Comic-Con, obviously pre-COVID, and there is a sea animal rescue center, a marine mammal center, just north of San Diego in Laguna Beach. And so my husband and I took a day trip and drove up there and got to see the seals and the sea lions. And we talked to volunteers for hours, and I had so many questions, and they were like, who is this girl? And why does she want to know the weirdest details about how, what do you feed them? Specifically, how do you blend up the fish guts in order to give them to the seals? And it was just super fun. And I loved it. And so I was really glad that I got to incorporate so much of that research into the story.
I also loved all the music references throughout the book. My question was, so obviously the book's titled Instant Karma, based on the John Lennon song, I assume? Yes?
Yes, yes. I
That's
have
what the
my
title
husband,
is?
I don't know if you can see, but I have my special
Oh,
John Lennon Instant Karma record that my husband gave me.
oh, that's so cool. For this book, what came first for you? Was it the characters? Was it just that little nugget of the idea, or what came first for you?
Yeah, no, it was the nugget of the idea. It was the idea that I just loved this very kind of vicarious fantasy of being able to cast karma on people. And it's something that actually had been in my brain since I was a teenager. And, so Prudence, the main character, she has this thing where when somebody annoys her or she sees someone doing something that she disapproves of, she has these fantasies of, I wish I could punish them. I wish the universe would swoop in and do something about this. And that's so me. Like, I used to do that. I've kind of done that my whole life. If I see someone doing wrongdoing, littering or throwing a lit cigarette out the window of their car or cutting in line or, these different things, I just am like, the righteousness rears up inside of me and I wish I could do something about it. And so that was something that has kind of been in my head for, like I said, since I was a teenager. And I've known for a long time that at some point I wanted to do something with that. I wanted to have a character that had this power and be able to explore what it would actually look like to be able to do this.
Wow, yeah. It would be kind of wild to have that power, I think.
It would be a total power trip. And as we discover in the book, like, Prudence is really not the best person to be given this power because she has really high expectations of people. And she's very quick to be like, I don't like you for this reason and you shall be punished. That's one of the parts of the book that one of the big story arcs is that she has to learn, don't always judge people, and you don't always know what's happening behind the scenes and what someone's going through and why they're doing the things that they are. Like, you can't just make those snap judgments all the time.
Exactly. That's one of my favorite things about the book is the way you do that with Maya and Prudence's judgment of Maya and the way that all unfolds. I just think that's beautiful. I think that, well done. Another question I have for you is, I mean, you talk about your writing process all the time through podcasts, through everything else, but could you just walk us through like a day in your writing, like an average day?
Sure. It's the funny thing with writing is no 2 days are ever quite the same because every book is different and you're constantly in different modes. One day might be really research heavy. The next day I might need to take some time to brainstorm or outline or work through a plot problem. And then there will be days where I'm in the groove and things are going great and I'm just writing all day long and the words are just flowing. And of course, those are the best days. And then the next day it all comes to a screeching halt and you're like, wait, no, I forgot about this huge plot hole that now needs to be solved. There's a lot of ups and downs with the writing process. And so a typical day, I don't know. I guess like an ideal day, I could say what an ideal day for me would be that I get up and I have my coffee and I read for a little bit. I don't like to write first thing in the morning. If I can help it, I want to ease into my day. And then get any annoying businessy tasks off my plate, answer emails, do the social media, blah, blah, blah. Homeschool my kids. That's a thing these days. And then I would have my afternoon dedicated to working on the work in progress. So like I said, that might be researching and outlining, it might be writing, it might be revising or editing, but being able to have a few hours to really focus and dig into it is the ideal when it happens.
You gotta have that ideal situation every once in a while.
Once in a while. No, the days, they do happen sometimes and you're like, oh, that was great. Why can't every day be like that? But life gets in the way.
Of course, nothing's perfect. Could you tell me a little bit about how, I know every book has a different editorial process, but maybe how the editorial process went for Instant Karma and how like your relationship with your different editors and how that changes dynamics with each book?
Yeah, so I have been super lucky, and this is very unusual, but I have had the same editor now for all of my books, my whole career. And I know very few authors that can say that. It doesn't happen very often. But she's great, and I love her, and we work so well together. And then again, kind of every book is different, and it depends on what are the unique challenges of this book. And with Instant Karma, I'm going to say it might be the book that I've written that required the least amount of editorial work. And I don't really know why that is. But something about the book when I was writing it, things just kept clicking together. And I felt like it didn't need as much work and pulling things together and like constantly molding the plot to get things to jive, like as frequently happened with my other books. Something about this book, it just kind of knew what it needed to be. And so then once it finally did go off to my editor, of course she had some notes and we worked on some elements of the plot to bring certain things to life and make it sparkle. But for the most part, it was not as in-depth of an editorial process as some of my other books have been.
Do you think that was because this one's contemporary versus your others that are more sci-fi?
Maybe. For me, I feel like one of my weaknesses as a writer is world building. And all of my previous books were fantasy and science fiction, which requires a lot more world building. And so for those books, a lot more inclusion of politics and what is the history of this world? How does the magic system work? Like all of these big ideas that really need to be figured out and streamlined throughout the story. And exactly like you point out, you don't really have that in Instant Karma. You can kind of just look at reality and be like, well, what does a cute little beachside town feel like? That's easy. And so, yeah, I think that could definitely be a part of it.
What books or films or music or whatever inspired you when you were younger as a writer, or what still inspires you today?
So many things. The first one that comes to mind is Sailor Moon, because I wrote Sailor Moon fan fiction when I was a teenager and wrote it for years and years. And even to this day, I can look at the things I'm writing and I can see where the influence of Sailor Moon is coming from. Like it's the hate to love romance and Instant Karma, so Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask. Same with like the secret identity themes that you see in Renegades, the idea of a people living on the moon in the Lunar Chronicles and a lost moon princess. Like all of these little elements are very much left over from just my pure love of Sailor Moon and how much fan fiction that I wrote. So I don't know. I feel like Sailor Moon might be just one of those things that is with me for my entire career, is constantly speaking in the back of my imagination.
If you could have any of your books or series adapted into anything possible, not necessarily like a TV show or a movie, maybe like a theme park or like a musical, what would you have adapted? What would you have it adapted into and why?
I have a long wish list. So it's hard to just pick one thing. But I think the thing that would ultimately make my life like this cannot be topped would be Cinder on Ice. And why? Why do I want Cinder on Ice? Because the costumes, and mostly I just want to see cute little robot Eco on ice skates. I just think that would be really cool.
That would be the best thing ever.
I don't even know how an ice show gets made, but if anybody out there is listening and has ties to the ice world, let's make it happen.
I want this now. This is my dream.
It would be something else.
One of my coworkers specifically was like, ask Marissa this. And I was like, okay, let's do it. She was talking to me. We were talking about how you have strong female characters at the center of every single one of your series and everything you've written. She wanted to know if there was any specific inspirations for those characters, or if there's any people you've drawn from in real life that have like inspired them or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, lots. It's hard sometimes to pinpoint like what specific things have triggered a character or inspired that character. I feel like as writers, we're constantly walking through the world and like taking little ideas, little bits and pieces from people that we meet or shows that we watch or books that we read. I can't, since we've already talked about Sailor Jupiter, I can tell you that Sailor Jupiter was a huge influence for Cinder's character, because I loved this idea of a girl who on the outside comes off as a, very strong, very little bristly, not very sensitive. It has kind of a tough girl persona. But then you get to know her and she's just all soft and squishy on the inside. And she just wants to be loved and she just wants to belong. And so that was a huge influence for Cinder's character specifically. Other than that, I feel like in writing a lot of my characters and female characters in particular, I'm writing for young Marissa and teenage Marissa, and who are the characters that I would have wanted to be best friends with? Who would I have looked up to and admired? And a lot of characters that I'm writing, I'm specifically giving them characteristics and personality traits that I myself am maybe a little jealous of, things that I wish I was as bold and brave as Scarlet is. I wish I was as intelligent as Cress. I wish I was, just as relentless as Nova. There's these different things that it's like, I know that I'm not that, but I think it's really cool when somebody can be that. So I think about that a lot as I'm developing my characters.
The writing for who you like, different qualities you wish you could have. I think that's a very admirable thing.
Yeah. And I think as readers, I mean, there's this thing about reading that one of the joys of reading is that you get to put on this cloak and become somebody else during the course of this story. You get to try out, what would it be like to be this person? What is it like to walk in their shoes? And I think that a book can inspire us to be a little bit more like the characters that we admire. So I take that to heart.
Yeah. Are there any of your characters that you wish, like specifically you wish you were more like? Any of them, like one, if you were to pick one that you wish you would be more like?
All of them. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I really do feel like I would love to have a little bit of all of them. And I also feel like I've put myself into all of them in bits and pieces as well. Probably Cinder, though, and just how resourceful she is, and her mechanically minded brain, I think, is so cool. I can't fix things. I don't know how a car works, but I just love who she is and who she becomes over the course of the story.
In hindsight, is there anything you would, if you could go back and change anything in any of your books, is there anything you would like to change?
I would give Prince Kai a last name. I get a lot of readers like, what is Prince Kai's last name? Doesn't have one. Sorry.
Have you thought of one after all these years?
No, I'm just resigned that the readership can figure it out.
We can have somebody choose the name and then that'll just be canon now.
No, that's a thing that happens in fandoms,
Oh, are there any scenes that got cut from any of your books that you particularly love that you wish you could bring back?
Oh, gosh. It's funny. I feel like we're talking a lot about Lunar Chronicles. My publicist is going to be like, Marissa, talk about instant karma. But the one that comes to mind is I had written a scene for Lunar Chronicles. It was going to be either in Cress or Winter. I'm not sure. But it was where like the crew needed money. And so they decided to stage this fake street fight between Wolf and Cinder. And it was epic. And I loved it. I actually ended up posting it on my blog years ago for people who want to go read it. But I just loved that. I loved getting to watch Cinder like kick Wolf's butt, but him also like kind of throwing the fight. And it was super fun. Didn't work into the plot though. Yeah.
Not everything can work. Gotta kill your darlings eventually. Congrats on your new book deal for Gilded. I'm very excited for it. What can you tell us about that?
that I finished the second draft yesterday. So I'm on a high. I'm at a peak right now of writing joy, because that's just the best feeling. Gilded, coming out this November, it is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which is one of my favorite fairy tales, and it is one of my favorite fairy tales particularly because I think it is so flawed, and there are so many things wrong with this story that my little writer brain just cannot resist digging into it and being like, okay, but what about this? And why did this happen? And what about this? And just on and on. So Gilded is my attempt to go in and answer all of those questions that are completely avoided in the original fairy tale. And yeah, it's about a girl who has been cursed by the god of lies, so that almost everything out of her mouth is a lie, and she's used that to become a storyteller. And so she entertains people with these just ridiculous stories that she makes up off the top of her head. And that gets her in trouble when the Earl King, who is kind of a dark elf type. I need to figure out what I'm going to refer to him as because I don't like dark elf. But the Earl King hears her proclaim that she can spin straw into gold. And soon she is whisked away by the wild hunt and trapped in this dungeon and ordered to do just that. And would you know it, a very handsome but very odd boy shows up who just happens to be able to spin straw into gold. And that's what I can tell you, and I'm super excited about it.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so excited. I love Rumpelstiltskin. I think it's so good. It's so good.
It is an undervalued fairy tale.
For your books, what comes first? Is it the characters, your settings, the plot, or does this vary for each book?
I would say the vast majority of my books start out with a what if question.
Mm-hmm.
So what if Cinderella was a cyborg? What if a superhero fell in love with a supervillain? What if a girl could cast instant karma on people? With Gilded, it was what if Rumpelstiltskin is not the villain of this story, because it is clearly the king. Anybody who reads this story, it's obviously the king is the villain. And so a lot of times, yeah, this what if story will come and it just kind of gets stuck in my head. And over time, it starts to develop into something more. And I start to get little ideas of characters, who would be the protagonist of this story, and a little bit later, what are some obstacles they might face in this story, and then the scenes and subplots start to develop, and you know, it's all very weird brain sciencey subconscious stuff.
So Marissa, what does your role look like in the new upcoming HBO Max version of Instant Karma?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't even remember, like, because that article that ran in the Hollywood whatever, it said like Marissa has been signed on as co-producer, executive producer. I don't even know what the title is, because that was kind of news to me. I was like, cool, awesome. I am here to give my opinion. Just call me up, Hollywood. I will tell you everything I know. But this is all new territory for me. I've had books optioned before, but this is the farthest that we've gotten into the process, which honestly still isn't very far. We're still looking to get a writer and some talent attached. But once the ball gets rolling, I don't know, I'm super excited. I really hope that I get to be really involved with it, as much for my own curiosity to see behind the scenes as anything. I'm just super excited about it.
Would you want to be a writer on it if that was something that was offered to you? No?
I would not. I think that writing TV is a very different writing process. It's a different talent. And I feel like I've written the book, and I've written the best book that I could, but I know that books do not translate one-to-one into a TV series. I know changes have to be made. You know, you have to cut this here, add this there to make it work. And I wouldn't want my own biases of how the story goes to affect what I hope will end up being a really great show. So of course I want to be involved, and if they ask my opinion on something, I will gladly give it. But no, I don't really want to be one of the writers.
So Marissa, do you have any advice for young writers that want to become published like you are?
I could give so much advice. I feel like I should write a book about it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great advice out there for aspiring writers. And of course, the number one that you hear all the time is write as much as you can and keep writing and keep at it. And don't feel like just because a book isn't working and you end up having to scrap that one and you move on to something else, or because you try to get an agent and nobody's interested and you feel like you just wasted a year working on this manuscript or whatever it is. Nothing is wasted. Every page, every story that you write, every manuscript, every draft, all of it is teaching you how to develop your craft, how to write interesting, compelling characters, how to build that suspense, how to bring in more obstacles and write characters that your readers are just going to fall in love with, and give them good voices and all of these things. You don't learn that the first thing you write. It's built up over time. So be patient with yourself. Know that it's gonna take time, and that's okay. You don't have to get published tomorrow or next year. Write what you love, have fun, and enjoy the process, and just keep going.
Exactly, because writing should be fun. It shouldn't be stressful.
It is fun. Why would we not do this if it wasn't fun? So many people, you forget that. And especially us grizzled published writers who've been around forever, people, you get tired and you hear about people getting cynical about the business and the market and all these things. And it is easy to forget that you're just telling stories. You're just making things up. You get to play in your imagination all day. Like, nothing's better than that. And I feel like the more that I can remind people of that and remind myself of that, then the better.
So I think that's about all the time we have for today. So I wanted to tell you, thank you so much for being here, for being our keynote. And I really appreciated all the helpful advice and fun, positive energy you brought to this.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, and I hope the festival goes super well.